President Biden is congratulating the first woman to be elected as the future president of Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum, a climate scientist, the former mayor of Mexico City, will also be the first Mexican president of Jewish heritage. Early results show Sheinbaum winning up to 60% of the vote over her opponent. And this election will not only have major consequences in Mexico, but it could also impact us here in the U.S. President Biden saying in a statement, in part, quote, "I look forward to working closely with President-elect Sheinbaum in the spirit of partnership and friendship that reflects the enduring bonds between our two countries." Let's get right to NBC's Guad Venegas live in Mexico City and standing by, NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Guad, tell us more. Who is Claudia Sheinbaum and why did voters choose her as their next president?
Anna, I should start off by saying that President Biden will be able to have conversations with her in English, something he could not do with current President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Sheinbaum, unlike the last two presidents, López Obrador and Enrique Peña Nieto, is fluent in English. She lived in the U.S. for some time while taking classes at Berkeley and Stanford. As you mentioned, she's an academic. She has a Ph.D. in energy engineering, which gives a lot of hope to Mexicans that have placed a lot of focus on climate change here and on issues with energy, the cost of power, the cost of gasoline. So we expect her to focus more attention on how Mexico can move forward with the issues, sometimes with gasoline prices going up and also the cost of energy. Let's hear from Sheinbaum last night when she spoke to her supporters.
No llegó sola, llegamos todas, con nuestras heroínas que nos dieron patria, con nuestras ancestras, nuestras madres, nuestras hijas y nuestras nietas. Con los Estados Unidos habrá una relación de amistad, respeto mutuo e igualdad como hasta ahora ha sido, y siempre defenderemos a las y a los mexicanos que se encuentran del otro lado de la frontera.
Sheinbaum speaking to all Mexicans, but also sending a message to all women in Mexico. We know that today, the news of her being elected is going around the world, the first female president in Mexico in the country's 200-year history. And last night, as you can hear her saying that all women arrive at office with her together. As she said, llegamos juntas, we came here together, and also sending a message to the United States saying that Mexico will work closely with the United States. There's a lot that they'll have to negotiate, like immigration policy, also the economy. Remember that Mexico and the U.S. not only share a big border, but they're also each other's largest trading partner, Anna.
That's right. And I think it is particularly moving to see a woman elected president in a country like Mexico. As somebody of Mexican heritage, we know machismo is a big part of the culture. And to see a woman, that's just one more note as to how historic this election is. And Julia, what does it mean now for America's relationship with Mexico?
Well, it couldn't come at a more important time, Anna. As you know, we're expecting to hear as soon as this week something on executive action having to do with the southern border. And this policy, as we understand it, will rely heavily on Mexico to do even more than they've already done. We know over the last year, as we've reported here at NBC, the previous administration under López Obrador more than tripled the number of interdictions of migrants going north, most of those U.S. bound. And now with this new executive action, they could be asking Mexico to do even more to take back migrants who won't be allowed to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, we know that in Mexico, they have repeatedly said under the López Obrador administration, which backed Sheinbaum, that they will work with whoever is president. They haven't wanted to come out strongly to criticize Trump or Biden. But we do understand from people within the Biden administration that there's really been a change in the way Mexico has been dealt with, really in a 180 from Trump to Biden, because the Biden administration says they treat Mexico like a sovereign equal, and that they go into these conversations about immigration, about fentanyl, about gun trafficking, something Mexico's really worried about, guns coming illegally from the United States. They're entering those conversations, treating them as equals, not putting pressure on them over trades and tariffs, just like the Trump administration did, and not using some of that really charged rhetoric that Trump did about Mexico when he was president and even currently. So this is welcome news for the Biden administration to be able to keep really a very similar administration in Mexico, going from Lopez Obrador to the Sheinbaum administration, because they are so closely connected. And the Biden administration would like to continue to do that work.
The criminal gangs, the drug cartels, squad, obviously top of mind for a lot of Mexicans as they went to the polls. This election cycle has been riddled with violence. From September to May, 34 political candidates or aspiring candidates were killed, including 3 mayoral candidates just last month. What's going on there? Why are these political candidates being targeted?
And Anna, when you look at that report with the 34, that will update because there were more killings this week just leading up to the election. So this is a case, according to experts, of organized crime gaining more power in local municipalities. So what you have to look at Mexico as two different parts of the country. The large cities like here in Mexico City, Guadalajara, the city of Monterrey, have good protection, and we didn't see a lot of violence there. The violence took place in the rural parts of the country like Guerrero, Oaxaca, Chiapas, areas where organized crime has slowly worked to get control of local governments. So a lot of the people involved in local elections are the ones that were the victims of this violence. So the new president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, who's now president-elect, will have to work on figuring out ways to fight the criminals, to fight these organizations that we used to call cartels, but experts are no longer calling them cartels because now they not only work with drugs, they also get money or make money from smuggling migrants and also from businesses that they have at the local level. So it'll be a big challenge moving forward for the next president as they deal with an increase in violence that we've seen in Mexico over the last few years, Anna.
Yeah, so Julia, in terms of the human trafficking and the migrant smuggling that Guad just referenced, you mentioned the potential executive action to come as soon as tomorrow at the border and President Biden's plans. What do we know about the potential plans he may be trying to institute here? Was the White House also waiting on this election to take further action?
Yeah, that's right. We do understand, based on some of our reporting, is that the timing of this announcement from the Biden administration was in part because they wanted to wait until Mexico got through this election so that there was no immigration news from the U.S. that could somehow change the fate of Sheinbaum being elected. Now, I will say that we are expecting this executive action to come tomorrow. It could probably come with a lot of fanfare. We expect to see a lot of people coming out to talk about this. Also, a lot of advocates criticizing it because it should raise the bar on who is allowed to cross into the United States and use a presidential authority or use an authority that they will claim as presidential to shut down the border at certain points. But what the top line is, we can expect a quick enjoined, expect it to be quickly enjoined in court so that it might not ever actually go into effect, Anna.
Julia Ainsley and Guad Venegas, thank you both for your reporting.